Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Matt from Matt's Bookshelf, and today I have a discussion slash storytime video focusing on my love for the classics and how within the past year I've rediscovered said love for classic literature. So to talk about how I rediscovered my love for classic literature, I first have to talk about how I discovered my love for classic literature in the first place, and I can very specifically pinpoint when I did because it was freshman year of high school in my English literature class. Prior to that, I had read a bit, but didn't particularly like reading at the time. I read, kids' books, and I did the bare minimum that I had to in order to get by, but I never really found any of that to be particularly engaging until my freshman year of high school, where I read The Odyssey, which is still to this day one of my favorite classics, even though it's an epic poem. I almost said book, but it's an epic poem, but you know what I mean. I've read it a couple times at this point. I will be rereading again for my Ulysses video coming up within the next year. But that was when I could pinpoint when I started to love classics, and from that point I remember specifically all the books I read during that English course, which were Things Fall Apart, Romeo and Juliet, Fahrenheit 451, and a bunch of other classic books that I really loved because my English teacher then was really able to break down these books from a non-snobbery standpoint. He was able to pick out the human elements of these plays and these books that, up to that point I thought only, like literary professors and snobby people would read. But he managed to humanize them, and I began to fall in love with the classics. And then through high school, I would say that trend kind of continued. I read a lot of great books during that time, but also with the caveat that when you're reading it in a school setting, you have deadlines, you have specific things you're supposed to be looking for, and it sort of restrains how much you can love a classic book in that way. I didn't realize it until within the past year when I've been reading classics on my own and trying to discover things I like about them, hidden messages by the author on my own, that I realized how sort of restricting and how it can have doomed yourself to not like classic literature in a school setting because you have people telling you what you're supposed to be looking for, and it restricts the creativity in trying to find out things for yourself. And I would say that throughout high school, I loved to read and into college, but I would say over time, I definitely strayed away from the classics. I read the Sun, West, and Fire series, which still to this day, no matter how many great books I've read, it's still, George R. Martin's prose is still top tier in my opinion, and the storytelling is still top tier. But I definitely strayed away from the classics more, and then just doing the bare minimum of reading I had to do for classes, and just barely getting by with that, and not really reading for fun on my own. And it really wasn't until this past year with COVID and having more free time that I started to read more casually. I started to read more dense literature. And that sort of started one day when I was at Barnes & Noble, and around March of last year, so, peak when things were starting to get bad. And I was looking for books to read because I was about to have a lot of spare time on my hands. And just on a whim, I picked up The Beautiful and Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I had read Great Gatsby in high school, and I really, really liked it. And just on this really random whim, I was browsing through the bookshelves, and I found F. Scott Fitzgerald's section. And I almost bought Great Gatsby again, but I didn't because I wanted to read something different. And for some reason, Beautiful and Damned stuck out to me. It was, denser prose, a much higher word count than I've been used to reading for a little while by this point. I said, this is the perfect time to really try to engage with a dense book because I have more free time, I have more brain capacity without work or school to dedicate more time into really thinking about what I'm reading and really focusing on what I'm trying to get out of this book. So I picked it up, and I loved it, and it definitely ignited my love for classic literature again. Specifically with this book, I was very captivated by F. Scott Fitzgerald's prose, obviously. It goes without saying that he's an amazing writer, but it wasn't until I read a book by his as an adult that I really grew to appreciate how phenomenal of a writer and how phenomenal of a storyteller and describer he is when I read The Beautiful and the Damned. The character development was some of the best I'd ever seen, and the way he sort of changes his writing style throughout. Like sometimes it's written in the typical F. Scott Fitzgerald prose, sometimes it's written as a play, so on and so on. And I was very captivated with this kind of stuff because I don't want to say I was reading generic books up to this point, but I was reading just more casual books, and seeing someone explore prose and story arcs in this way was really captivating to me. And it really was a good time consumer during the beginning days of COVID because I had a lot of time, and I was really enjoying spending that time trying to dissect this really dense book. And not all of it was smooth sailing. As I said, I hadn't really read a classic for a long time since then, and there were definitely times where I was getting kind of bored or things were getting kind of tedious with me because I was not really used to examining things outside of the story itself. But overall, I mean, a year later, The Beautiful and the Damned has stuck with me. I've read 3 other F. Scott Fitzgerald works since then, that being The Side of Paradise, Rewrite Great Gatsby, and Reda's collection of short essays in a collection called On Booze. And all of them are great, but The Beautiful and the Damned really stuck with me. And on top of encouraging me to read more F. Scott Fitzgerald, it just in general encouraged me to read more classic literature. And since then, I've read more Hemingway. I'm currently reading Crime and Punishment. I've read some Lovecraft. I've read some Edgar Allan Poe. I read The Leopard by Giuseppe de Lampedusa, which is an Italian classic that I feel like a lot of Americans haven't heard of, including me, until I literally Googled Italian classics and found this book, and I did a review for it. My last video's a review for that, so check that out as well. The Beautiful and Damned sort of skyrocketed this desire to not only read deeper into works, but think more of what the author is trying to get across, examine more books in genres I like. So, as I just said, I've been reading more Hemingway as well. So I've been getting into the Jazz Age and postmodernist literature a lot more. It's modernist literature a lot more because of this love for classics that I've discovered, as well as researching books by country, books by time period. It's really opened my eyes to how much there is in the classics world, both in fiction and nonfiction and in essays and what have you. I mean, I literally just bought 2 essays recently by James Joyce because I'm reading more Joyce. I just read Portrait of the Artist Man and Exiles, and now I have this collection of essays, which is something I never would have dreamed to have done a year and a half ago because, I mean, why would I? It's something that would never have occurred to me. And on top of taking that first leap into the classics by reading The Beautiful and Damned and having it basically change my perspective on reading and making me want to indulge more into writers and writing styles and time periods and locations, I also have to contribute a lot of that love to my friends, Mark and Tyler, whose channels are Drunzo and Colorless World, I think. It was Tyler Talk, he just changed his name, it's Colorless something, I'll put in the link below. But seeing them get more into classics as well, and being able to discuss classics with them, definitely enhanced my love for classic literature in general. It's fun to read, and it's fun to analyze classics and movies in general, any form of art, but it's more fun to discuss them with people, in my opinion. I do have a lot of fun highlighting and annotating my books now, but nothing really beats sitting down, as I just did. I just hung out with them last weekend, just sitting down at a table and talking about what you've been reading and comparing and contrasting your ideas and being introduced to new literature. Even though, like, they're my friends, I talk to them every day for the most part, we're always reading new things, and we're always sort of challenging each other to read new books and to get into different genres as well. And that has really helped as well. And I have to say, the booktube community, creating a booktube channel has really forced me to look more deep into what I'm reading. As I just read Portrait of the Artist Young Man recently, the amount of research and how closely I analyzed the book as I was reading it was something that I would never have done had I not dedicated myself to making a series on Joyce. And I'm grateful that I did decide to make the series on Joyce, because reading Portrait of the Artist Young Man so deeply and Exile so deeply has really made me appreciate Joyce's style. And Portrait especially really hit me at the right time. I really love the book, and it's been sticking with me since I read it about a month ago. And I can't really say that I would have appreciated it as much as I have had I not dedicated myself to making a series on Joyce. And that goes for all of the people who are subscribed to our channels as well. Mainly Drunzo and Tyler's channels, because, you know, I have the least amount of subscribers, but seeing what they have thought of my videos and getting support from them as well, and getting their book recommendations too, and seeing their channels, some of them who have channels, some of them who don't, but just in general, keep creating discourse and creating discussion about the books that I've talked about has been very helpful and very motivating to keep reading the classics, because it's not always easy. Sometimes you just want to read an easier book, but seeing how our channels have grown and seeing how my channel has grown and how I've grown as a reader as well has been very motivating to keep going with the classics, to keep staying hungry in regards to finding new and challenging books to read and new and challenging genres I'm not overly familiar with. And all of that has really improved my ability as a reader. And as someone who's a writer as well, it's greatly enhanced my ability as a writer too, because I'm reading all this classic literature and all these classic prose. Even though they're all in the classics category, all these authors that I've read are very different from one another, I have to say. So when you go into the classic genre, you're always getting something new, no matter what you're reading or who you're reading it by. And that's, the greatest part of the classics genre. It's not really a genre, it's just a vague way of expressing books that are important historically. But you know what I mean. So that'll be my video for today. Relatively short one. I hope you enjoyed it, though, nonetheless. I had this idea about a week ago when I was hanging out with my friends and kind of talking about how we all got into the classics in the first place. And I actually got Mark to read The Beautiful and Damned last year because I was praising it. And he has expressed similar feelings to me, saying that this is one of the best books he's ever read. If you want to check out my other videos, I just did one on Giuseppe di Lampedusa's The Leopard, and I did a classics book haul video wherein I went to a thrift bookstore and bought a couple books that I think are cool. And I know I said I'd do the Exiles video this week, but I've been relatively unmotivated with writing the script. I was actually just writing the script a little bit earlier before recording this video, but hopefully it'll be my next video. It's going to be very ambitious. It's going to be longer than I want it to be, but it's going to be worth it in the long run when we get to Ulysses. And I think the Exiles video will be good. I think it's a good play as well, and I think you should read the play before watching the video because it's relatively short and you can probably get it done by the time I actually write the script and record the video. So no excuses there if you want to read it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you want to share your origin story for getting into classics, if you're into classics, or how booktube has affected your views on literature or how it's changed your views on literature, let me know in the comments below, because part of the fun of booktube is hearing from the communities as well. And look out for other videos by me and my friends. I leave Mark and Tyler's channels in the description below. Check them out as well, even though you probably already subscribed to them. And thank you for making it this far.